Welcome to the Parenting Power Podcast, supporting parents with the real-life tools they need to raise the confident, interdependent people the world needs. Gail Bell and Julie Friedman-Smith interview experts who share their knowledge to assist parents in creating a home environment where kids can thrive.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Real Life Parenting Podcast. This is Julie Friedman-Smith.
And I'm Gail Bell.
Today's podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Beaner's Fun Cuts for Kids. Parenting is hard, haircuts shouldn't be. Visit beanersfuncuts.com for a location near you. Today, our guest is the esteemed Dr. Barbara Coloroso. Barbara is an internationally recognized speaker and author in the areas of parenting, teaching, school discipline, nonviolent conflict resolution, and reconciliatory justice. She is the author of 5 international bestsellers, including Just Because It's Wrong Doesn't Make It Right, Kids Are Worth It, and The Bully, the Bullied, and the Not-So-Innocent Bystander. Gail and I are so excited to have Barbara with us on the line. She has been a role model for us for so many years. We have read her books, attended her lectures, and are honored to have had her write a very supportive blurb for the back cover of our book. And now we get to share her wisdom with all of you. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Julie and Gail. It's a real joy.
We're so excited. Barbara, we really appreciate the clarity that you brought to the issue of bullying. Can you, for our listeners, define bullying and sometimes why that word is just so overused?
It is overused. And one of the mistakes we make when we start with all the anti-bullying programs is that suddenly everything is bullying. The biggest mistake as parents that we can make, and also as educators, because I speak from both positions, is that we fail to discern the difference between normal, natural, and necessary conflict and bullying. Conflict, as Liz Loescher said, is inevitable. Violence is not. So we have to teach our kids how to handle their conflicts nonviolently. So conflicts you resolve, bullying you stop. Because bullying is a conscious, willful, deliberate activity intended to harm, where often those who are targeting the child gets pleasure from the pain that child experiences. It's that laughing at somebody else's pain that we really need to be tuned into. 2 kids fighting over a TV program, normal. Next time they do that, I want you to say they're normal. In fact, if they don't fight once in a while, they grow up to make lousy spouses. And those listeners who have spouses who don't like conflict, keep the peace, don't bring it up, let it go. You'll know what I'm talking about. Children need to learn to handle their conflicts. 2 kids fighting over a TV program. Now, part of the foundation of my work is the brick wall, the jellyfish, and the backbone parent. The brick wall parent rushes right in and says, stop it, stop it, stop it, turn that off, nobody's watching it, which never teaches either of the kids how to handle their conflicts. It's mom or dad or an adult present that will do it. Jellyfish, oh, kids, please, your brothers and sisters are supposed to love one another. Don't do this to me. Nobody's solving it. Or the jellyfish B is, here's a TV for you, here's a TV for you, no conflict. And sadly to say, that's more common today than we ever like it to be, where kids never have to share a Game Boy. They both have their own. They don't have to share TV programs. But the backbone parent, now if you look at a backbone, it gives you flexibility you don't get from a rigid brick wall, but it also gives you an environment that's conducive to creative, constructive, and responsible activity you don't get from a jellyfish. And we need both. We need flexibility and an environment that invites creative, constructive, and responsible activity. So you walk in, take the remote, and say you're both fighting. You may turn this set back on as soon as you both have a plan. Now, 1 of 3 things will happen. They'll share, both get up and leave it, or come up with a plan they both can live with. And as long as the one who came up with the plan doesn't use brute force or intimidation, I mean, you do have to intervene if the kid says, I'm going to beat you over the head if you don't let me watch my program. You got to say, not a good plan, not a good plan. I mean, there's a reason we're hanging with kids, They're going to grow up, but we have to be there to help raise them. And we say, not a good plan. But if one says, you let me watch this program today, you can have 2 tomorrow. And the younger one says, fine, without thinking that tomorrow's Saturday, don't intervene. Just let him experience the consequences. The next day is the learning opportunity where you say, I noticed you're giving in to your big brother. You realize there's no programs to watch today. Would you like to learn a few good lines? And you teach them the lines. Well, I'm willing to let you watch this program today if I can have this one on Monday, this one on Tuesday, and I want it in writing. You teach kids to do that, nobody's going to walk all over that kid. But we have to take the time to teach them to handle their conflicts. So, again, conflicts are normal and natural and necessary. But now we have those same two kids. The 10-year-old has the 5-year-old's arm up the back. Now, we're not talking a yoga pose here. Kids screaming in pain. You rush in there, and as soon as your daughter sees you, she drops her brother's arm and starts comforting him. And we say to the kid who's screaming, what are you screaming like that for? And the way your daughter looks at your son, because bullying has to do with intimidation. He knows if he says anything right now, since bullying happens for the most part under the radar of adults, he knows if he says anything right now, he's going to be in a lot more trouble when you're not around. So he weighs the odds. He says, nothing, Mom, nothing. Well, then quit screaming like that. We have just retargeted the target. But step back a moment. When you walked in there, you saw something you wished you hadn't seen. You saw your daughter smile. It's called a smirk before she saw you. She was actually getting pleasure from harming her brother. That's bullying. A conscious, willful, deliberate activity intended to harm where you get pleasure from somebody else's pain. With the TV program, they were both fighting. It can escalate to where they're hitting one another. You do have to intervene. But usually they're both angry. They're both upset. They both want something. But in bullying, one kid is in pain and the other is laughing at that pain as they're inflicting it. Now, the title of my work is The Bully, the Not-So-Innocent Bystander. In that situation, there was no not-so-innocent bystander. But often on the school ground or at community events or after-school activities, there are those not-so-innocent bystanders. William Burroughs, the English author, said it so beautifully. There are no innocent bystanders. What were they doing there in the first place? And I think it's important that we recognize the various roles that our children may be playing. So if we look at that and look at the various roles they might be playing, we might be better able to understand that conflict is something that we actually have to see as part of our children's lives. Bullying, never. It should not be. It's not normal. It's not natural. It's not necessary. And it certainly harms all the characters in this bully circle.
There's so much information in what you just shared with us and some great examples. We've all been there and seen that happening, and real clarity around what bullying looks like. And that smirk, we know what it looks like, right?
Yeah, the smile on the face. Yeah, that smirk, they're getting pleasure. All the girls are laughing, one girl's crying. All the boys are laughing, one boy's fighting back tears. We were just teasing, but the smile is there. So I think it's important that we teach young people the 4 ways and 3 means that bullying can occur. And when I'm working with adults, it's most important as parents that we recognize that it can be a one-time significant event. So often, anti-bullying programs have as their definition must be continuous and repeated over time. I think once in the toilet counts. Once called a gross name matters. Once locked out of a chat room with online targeting matters. It needs to be stopped. It needs to be recognized for the cruelty that it is. Bullying is about mean and cruel. It's about having contempt for somebody. So it can be a one-time event. The second is the most common, and that is continuous and repeated over time. That's why a young child knows that if he says anything right now, it's just going to happen again, because it often is repeated. The third is hazing, which we are finally waking up to in both of our countries, to the devastation that it is. Not some hazing, not just extreme hazing, but hazing by its nature, where kids have to do denigrating or demeaning or dehumanizing activities in order to join a group. We've got to come up with better rituals for that. And the fourth is the one many of us are very concerned about and have to deal with on a daily basis, and that's cyber, digital, or technology-enhanced bullying. The online world and the offline world have merged for our young people to become what is their real world today. And when kids target somebody online, they typically are targeting them offline as well. Or if they do it online, when the child shows up at school, The others are gleefully looking to see what harm they did the night before. So again, it's getting pleasure from somebody else's pain. That's the 4 ways you can do it, but there's 3 means to do it. I gave you an example for the least amount done, and that was physical bullying. And I'll guarantee you, if a child has been physically bullied, he or she has been verbally or socially bullied, or both, before. Because verbal bullying is the most common. Boys and girls do that one equally well. You know, that adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, is a lie. Words can be devastating. They are step 1 in the dehumanization process of another human being. In my parenting work, I also have worked in Rwanda with orphans from the 94 genocide, where in 100 days, 1 million human beings were macheted to death. And when I wrote my book, Extraordinary Evil, I had many reporters saying, but I thought you lectured on parenting and teaching. I said, where do you think it starts? It starts in our homes, our schools, and our communities, because it truly is a short walk from hateful rhetoric to hate crimes to crimes against humanity. It's not a giant leap. Genocide is not an unimaginable horror. It was thoroughly imagined, meticulously planned, and horrifically carried out by people who started with the dehumanization of another human being. I mean, Tutsis were called cockroaches. Armenians were called dogs. The Jews were called vermin and bacteria eating at the fabric of our humanity. And when we talk about disinfecting the border and the like, that creates a climate where someone is no longer in the equation I and thou. I'm unique and you're unique, and we have a common humanity, that we, or the us. In bullying, I turn, even as a 5-year-old, I can turn another child into an it with the words that I use. And so words matter, and I think it's very important that we recognize that it is the most common form. It can be an entree to the other 2 or combined with the other 2 for an even greater wallop. So to tolerate verbal bullying is to allow kids to descend into the other forms of bullying. So the least amount of done is the physical. It's the one we see the most because it's the most visible, but it's the least amount done. Very few boys resort to physical bullying. They fight a lot, but that's not bullying, and they threaten, but that's verbal bullying. An even smaller number of girls resort to physical bullying, but they don't have to. They have in their social arsenal something far more powerful, and that's that social or relational bullying, the shunning, the rumor, the gossip, and the exclusion, which at any age can be devastating, but especially in the middle years can be especially devastating to a young person. We want to feel like we belong and that we matter.
Can you help us to learn more and how we can educate our kids to find the courage to be helpful bystanders, to not be that not so innocent bystander that's there, and to turn the tide a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the goal of all my work, is to raise responsible, resourceful, resilient, compassionate human beings who are willing to stand up for values and against injustices, who know how to think, not just what to think, who aren't easily led, who don't do to please. And so I call them the brave-hearted. It's also called upstanders in some programs, but I call them brave-hearted. And so let's look for a moment at the bully circle. In the center, you have the targeted kid. Now, anyone can be targeted. You can be targeted because you're short, you're tall, you developed early, you developed late, your race or your religion or your gender or your physical or mental abilities. If you have an allergy, you can be targeted. If you're new, the one thing all targeted kids have in common is somebody targeted them. And one of the things we're seeing more and more is we're asking young people to be kinder to one another, is to understand that often those who bully will pick on kids who are helpful to other human beings. We just saw a horrific tragedy in Hamilton, Ontario, where a young boy who had been helpful to his friends and, in fact, invited the bullies to take his bike and leave the other kids alone was stabbed to death. I mean, that's the extreme. But it didn't just start with that. It started with the words and the shunning and the rumor and the gossip. And so we have the targeted kid. At the very top of the circle, you have the bully. Now, you can't tell bullies by how they look. It's how they act. Again, these are only roles kids are playing. And so if they're playing that role, we can re-educate them into other roles. If you have a kid who's bullying, know that they have leadership skills. And how can we rewrite that script to help them use those leadership skills in a more proactive way. Right below the bully is the bully's henchman. And this is the kid you didn't raise to bully, but you raised them to act with integrity and civility and compassion. But you also raised them to do to please. They got all those S++ of behavior, catch them being good awards, lunch with the principal, but they were rewarded for everything. The bribes and threats, rewards and punishments interfere with raising an ethical human being. So it's that high-status social bully that says to all the other girls, I don't like the new girl. You want to be in my group? Don't eat lunch with her. The henchman will put her backpack down so that seat is gone for the girl who wants to sit there. Now, she didn't instigate it, but she went through. She followed the bully because she wants to fit in the popular crowd. Right below them is the active supporters. Those are the kids who will video that in the lunchroom and post it on Instagram for all the other kids to laugh at. Then there's the passive supporter, who may be your daughter who downloads that from the Instagram account and then laughs at the pain inflicted on the new girl. She is part of the problem still. Right below her is a deadly lot, the disengaged onlooker, who, by the way, can be us as adults, who turn a blind eye and say, oh, boys will be boys, girls just want to be mean, it's part of growing up. No. On the upswing, we have the potential witness. That is the kid you did raise to act with that integrity, civility, and compassion. You taught her how to think, not just what to think. She was not praise-dependent. She did the right thing because it was the right thing to do, but she's afraid of the bully, which is real. She's afraid if she steps in, she'll be next. She's afraid if she steps in, she'll make it worse for the target, or she's simply afraid. But the sad thing is she's still part of the problem. Now, at the very top, the antithesis of the bully is the kind of kids we want to raise. The ones who will step in, will go sit down with the new girl and say, let me join you for lunch, knowing she will do that at cost. She will not get a scratch and sniff sticker and star catch and be a good award or lunch with the principal. She'll probably get, oh, Miss Kitty Two Shoes or you're next. And that young boy in the locker room, when all the other boys say, look at that kid over there, different skin color, religion, gender, physical or mental ability, let's go mess him up. I want your son to be the one to say, no, that's mean, that's cruel, even if it costs him. When the other boys say, what are you, chicken? What are you, just like him? But the brave-hearted kid can be a witness, a resistor, or a defender. And I want to teach young people you can play any of those three roles. A witness is somebody who's willing to go tell an adult and know that, number one, the target will be kept safe. Number two, the witness will be kept safe. And then number three, we will deal effectively with a kid who's doing the bullying. So it needs to be safe to tell at home. Kids need to be able to tell you about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you need to be willing to listen and not write it off. Oh, well, he likes you. That's why he did that to you. No, he was being mean. Or, that's just the way kids are at that age. We cannot do that. Then there's the resistor, and that's the kid who gets along with the bully, because bullies bully specific kids. They aren't mean and cruel to everybody. And so they go up to him and say, leave him alone. It's okay. Let her eat lunch with us, or leave him alone in the locker room. And they actually interact with the bully. They do that at risk, because the bully might say, mind your own business, or I don't want to eat lunch with you either. But they're willing to do that because it's the right thing to do. And then the defender is the kid who will actually step in for the boy in the locker room, step in for the girl in the lunchroom and eat lunch with her, or ask the other boy to come with him. It's hard to do that, but how do you begin to raise a kid who will do that? First of all, you and I have to walk our talk and talk our walk. How do you deal? Yeah, how do you deal with someone who is bigoted? And how do you deal with somebody who is walking through the grocery store slower than you'd like them to? How do you deal with a new neighbor who looks different than you, who has a different faith tradition or a different language as their first language? You see, our children are watching. And how do you deal with that bigoted relative? Now, we all have bigoted relatives. Some were on the family tree. Some just aren't on the branches yet. They're right there at the dinner table, spewing bigoted comments thinly disguised as jokes. Can your children hear you saying, I'm bothered by that, or that was bigoted, or that was racist, or that was sexist, when all the other relatives roll their eyes and say, what, can't you take a joke? Not that kind. And you've had an impact when you walk back in the dining room and everybody shuts up. But you've had an impact on your children. And you've had a bigger impact when your mother is very upset with you at that dinner table, the family gathering, and says, but Uncle George is old. I got to tell you, I'm 72. Old. is never an excuse for bigotry and intolerance, ever. So can you say in front of your children with your mother upset with you, Mom, I don't ever want my children to think it's okay to make those kind of comments no matter what your age is. Now, you may not fare well at that family gathering, but the chances of your kids stepping in for a girl in the lunchroom or a boy in the locker room have been greatly increased. The next thing you can do is let them make lots of choices from the time they're very young. And you say, well, what does that have to do with stopping bullying? If children believe they have agency in their lives, that what they do matters, that they are fully capable of making decisions, then they are more likely to step in at the good time it needs to happen. So it starts with the very basics, red pajama, blue pajama. When my kids were little, they didn't get to make all of their decisions. I didn't say, do you want to go to bed or not? That's not a decision you give a 2-year-old. But you do say, do you want to go to bed now with your red pajamas or now with your blue pajamas? I mean, that's a decision a 2-year-old can make, and they show up red bottoms, blue top. It's not life-threatening. I've always said it's not life-threatening, morally threatening, or unhealthy. Don't intervene. If it's life-threatening, you intervene. You don't say to a 16-year-old, go ahead and jump off the building. We'll discuss the consequences after you land. No, you pull them back, give them a second chance at life. But red pajama, blue pajama, if they mix them up, so what? They get to be their own person. It's those kids who are willing to stand up. And then you increase it, age-appropriate and ability-appropriate choices and decisions in all areas of their lives, so that when they leave home and school, they're making all of their own decisions and truly responsible for all of their own behavior. But again, we have to help make that happen. And one of the best ways is letting them make choices, decisions, and mistakes, and allow them to experience the consequences for all those. Because then they're beginning to say, you know what, I matter. Letting them make real choices says, I matter. And then the way you deal with it, as opposed to bribes and threats and rewards and punishments, is giving kids constructive comments. I don't say, oh, I'm so proud of you. You're such a good big brother, when he was just trying to figure out how to get that baby brother back where it came from. You say, thank you for bringing me the diaper so I could hold the baby on the changing table. Thank you for walking the dog. Look how happy he is to be outside. He's been inside all day. Thank you for watering that plant. It was really wilted. Now it's standing up strong. Thank you for sitting at the lunch table, inviting the new boy to sit with you, because now he feels like he belongs. And we praise kids too much. We don't thank them enough. But watch how I thank them. You stroke the deed, not the kid. Be very specific to the deed, and let your child know how his or her actions have impacted you as a parent and baby brother in a good way, the animal, the plant, and a child at school. Then they begin to realize that, wow, I can make a difference by doing these things. But, oh, you're such a good big brother, doesn't really tell the kid why. And he knows at times he's not such a good big brother. And that kind of shoots that down. So we want to stroke the deed, not the kid. We want to give them good comments about, here's how you thank people. Here's how you be kind to another person. We've got to instruct them in that. So it's real important that they get compliments, comments, and instruction on how to be kind, and constructive criticism when they've done something that is hurtful to another person or is not right. I noticed you mentioned the title of one of my books, and you made the same mistake. So many people stating that title, you said just because it's wrong doesn't make it right, which is absolutely right. But the title is just because it's not wrong doesn't make it right. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And just because it's not wrong doesn't make it the right thing to do. And so I want kids to understand that, to be able to look at what am I doing to be kind to another human being. And so if we do those kinds of things on an everyday basis and look at what's happening today in our culture, the three most virulent agents ripping apart the fabric of our humanity today are hating other human beings with utter contempt, making them into it, dehumanizing them, hoarding, me, mine, and more, which is an insidious part of American culture and Canadian culture right now. The only thing I wish for children is they have enough people in their life to care deeply about them, enough food, enough resources that they can become as creative as possible with the gifts that they have. So hoarding and then harming through lying and cheating and stealing. What's wrong with lying and cheating and stealing? First of all, it destroys your own personal integrity. Then it destroys your relationship with the other, which in turn destroys community. So what would be the antidote? If every day, regardless of the age of your children, you can teach them to care deeply, share generously, and help willingly. Now, caring deeply doesn't mean you like a person. I say to students, you don't have to like every kid in this class, but you must honor their humanity. You must treat them with dignity and regard. And I often say in my parenting lectures, do any of you have a teenager? And many raise their hand. I say, I bet some of you don't like your teenager right now. You really don't like them. And some of them wave frantically saying, you got that right. I don't even want to go home today, because that happens. But others will say, oh, no, it's not him I don't like. I don't like his behavior. No, you don't like him. You don't want to go home. So let's be honest. But you love him deeply. You care deeply about him. And if he got in trouble, you'd be there right away, put your arm around him and say, we love you. You're in trouble. We know you can handle it. Brought a list of lawyers we think might take your case. Good luck. But you're there, and help them solve the problems they got themselves into. And so it's so important that we every single day give them opportunities to care deeply about other human beings, share generously, and help willingly. They need to know those kinds of things to be an intimate part of their everyday life.
I'm just sitting here basking in all your knowledge, and it's just wonderful that you're taking this
Well,
time.
I'm frustrated.
Yeah, I know you are.
Because I want to tell you the difference between teasing and taunting, and what to do if your kid's been targeted. And I know we're out of time, so I'll have to come back.
That's okay. We'll have you back.
Just a very quick thing on teasing and taunting. Teasing is laughing with your friend. Taunting is laughing at another child.
I love that you brought that up, because we talk a lot about that at Parenting Power, and I notice that a lot even in the kids I engage with, whether through my friends or whatever. And in the Bell household, we do a lot of fun teasing, and I just think it's so important to have some fun, never crossing that line to taunting.
Yeah, if you can laugh with one another, we can get through the rough times together. Laughter is so critical in our lives. But it must be always laughing with, not laughing at. And there is no slippery slope.
No.
Teasing is a mutual kind of adventure. Taunting is not. Taunting is an attack. It's a form of bullying. And if you can teach your young people the difference between those two at a very young age, I start about age 4 in the actual teaching of that, then by 4th grade, we can get into more serious issues like flirting, which is normal, natural, and necessary, and helps keep the human race going, and sexual bullying. And you say, 4th grade? Yes, grade 4.
Yeah.
And because the difference between teasing and taunting draw a direct correlation between the difference between flirting and sexual bullying. Yeah. And so we want to be teaching our kids about that. There's so much more, and I just thank you for the opportunity to talk about something I feel very passionate about.
Well, we can certainly tell, and we want to thank you for all of the wisdom you continue to share with parents. We're going to have you back.
Well, because I think it's so important for young parents. I'm on 3rd generation of parents now. I've had young people come up to me with their babies in arms, and this young couple came up to me in Winnipeg and said that their grandmothers, both sides, had given them, when they got pregnant, given them the Kids Are Worth It book.
Kids Are Worth It.
So it's basic, it's lighthearted, and it talks about how we can be the best parent we can possibly be, and we mess it up, but it's, you know what? Kids mess it up, we mess it up, and we can get through this together.
Learning for all of us. Yes, thank you so much. So we'll look forward to talking with you another time. But Barbara, if there's somebody stuck under a rock on this planet that doesn't yet know how to learn more from you, what's the best way for our listeners to find you?
They can go to kidsareworthit.com. And it has a list of all my materials. There's also handouts there, which you are free to use, please, on parenting and bullying and ethics, which is the just because it's not wrong doesn't make it right. But I also have a whole handout on bullying and the connection between bullying and hate crimes and crimes against humanity, which is the extraordinary evil, because we can stop it on the home and school and community level, and it needs to be.
Yeah. And we recommend those handouts all the time. And I had another question for you, but I think you just answered it right there, which is we do not have necessarily the control to change things at the higher up levels. And what we absolutely have is the ability for each of us to have the power, have the ability to affect change with the people around us. So our jobs as humans and as parents is to be modeling and to be sharing this information with our families. And if as each of us does that, that will have a greater impact on society. So thank you so much.
It is the only thing that will.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
We hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Real Life Parenting Podcast. If you're looking for more real life parenting tools, then please sign up for our weekly Thoughtful Thursday email newsletter. It's free and it's really good. Just visit our website, parentingpower.ca, to subscribe. While you're there, check out our book, A Year of Intentional Parenting. Like this podcast, the book was created to help you feel confident, capable, and calm. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to connecting with you again right here every Monday.